Alright guys, it's time to wrap up 2018. We're going to take a look today at my favorite top 10 figures or entries, not just figures in some instances, for the year. This encompasses every line across everything that I have gotten a hold of this year that actually was released in 2018. So just because I bought it this year doesn't mean it counts. So older figures don't count. This is only stuff that came out and was released and you could find online or in stores that was released in 2018. So let's just get right into it. Number 10 is a figure that I kind of flipped and flopped on for a little while because I wasn't really sure if he should be on this list, but as I whittled things down, it became quite obvious that yes, this guy definitely needs to be here. And it's the only SH Figuarts Star Wars figure on my list, despite getting quite a few of them this year. But this is the one that I've wanted for a very long time. The one that I think just embodies this particular character really, really well. And that is the SH Figuarts Revenge of the Sith Anakin Skywalker. This figure has all the sculpt, the paint, the articulation you would expect to get from an SH Figuarts, and it's one of my, if not my favorite prequel character, and this is my preferred version. Nobody wants Attack of the Clones Anakin. You always want Revenge of the Sith Anakin, and this guy delivers in that regard. He's got extra faces, we've got the Sith eyes head, everything that I wanted the Black Series to be that, let's be honest, it isn't. It delivers with this particular figure. It's a no-brainer for me. Number 9 is a figure that I've already talked about recently in another top 10 list, and it's the only Marvel Legends that's going to appear on the list, so you probably already know who that's going to be. But number 9 for me is Marvel Legends Fantastic Four Thing figure, the Walgreens exclusive Thing. This is, without a doubt, for me and for a lot of other folks, the best Legends to have come out this year. He's a fantastic entry into the Fantastic Four lineup. He is definitely the best of the bunch. Hasbro spared no expense on the figure in terms of sculpt, paint, accessories. Everything you need to have a complete Thing package is included with this guy, and it's just one of those figures that they went above and beyond on to give us a build-a-figure quality figure for a standard $20 price point. This is a must-have figure for any Legends collector, Fantastic Four fan or not. Number 8 is the top figure for Black Series for me this year, so you've probably already seen that video. And it's the only Black Series to appear on my list just because so many other things kind of overshadowed Black Series for me this year. But number 8 is without a doubt the Gamorrean Guard, the Target exclusive Gamorrean Guard. This figure is for me a shining example of what Black Series can be, what it should be in many ways. Obviously this guy's a little more expensive than your standard figure, but it's another instance just like Thing from Marvel Legends where Hasbro shows exactly what they're capable of doing. They kind of went above and beyond on this guy. Articulated jaw, anyone? That's the key defining characteristic for this guy for me. It's a must-have figure. He's got crazy amounts of accessories for what he is. He has fantastic soft goods, sculpt, paint, everything is just done to a higher degree for this figure. It's without a doubt the must-have Black Series for me this year, and he couldn't not appear on the list. Number 7 takes us to the line that I guess I've talked about the most this year, probably, if not at least the last quarter of 2018. So it's pretty obvious. We're talking about Mythic Legions right now. Number 7 is the Mythic Legions Coliseum Rhaegor figure from the Four Horsemen. This is another example of a Four Horsemen Mythic Legions figure that I think just oozes a great cool factor. Everything about this guy just works for me. He's firing on all cylinders, basically, from paint to sculpt. All the little details on this guy, the War Duke homage that they kind of shoved in with some of his add-on pieces, everything about this guy really works for me. From the minute I got him out of the package, I knew that he was going to appear on a list, but it really only mattered in terms of how high I was going to be able to put him. He is easily one of the best Mythic Legions to come out this year, and he couldn't not appear on my list. Number 6 is the second of 2 Figuarts to appear on my top 10 this year. It's not a Star Wars Figuarts, it's a Dragon Ball, not Z, just Dragon Ball Figuarts, and that is going to be Kid Goku. This is easily the one figure throughout the entire year that when I tried to do his review, I got so backed up because I was just playing around with the figure. From the second I got him out of the box, I just couldn't stop posing him, changing out of his accessories. He comes with so much stuff. There is so much potential with this particular figure, and it's one that I've wanted for a really long time. I've always wanted a smaller Kid Goku figure, and despite the fact that this guy may or may not be in scale with really any other Figuarts, I think that Bandai absolutely nailed it. They gave me everything I could have possibly wanted in one complete package with this little guy. Number 5 takes us back to a property that I have been a fan of since I was a kid in the late 80s, the early 90s, and that would be the Boss Fight Studio Bucky O'Hare Dead-Eye Duck figure, either the regular one or the Corsair Canard variant, whichever you prefer. They're the same figure, just done up in different colors. Both of them excellent examples of what Boss Fight Studio can do with this particular franchise. I have been a huge proponent of this line since the minute I knew that they were coming out with these figures, and Dead-Eye Duck for me is the pinnacle figure right now. I was really hoping to get the Storm Toad by the time this list came out, just because I figured he might have also appeared. But we are just going to stick with Dead-Eye Duck for number 5. I think he absolutely deserves a spot on the list. He is a fantastic figure, maybe a little on the lesser known side in terms of the general toy collecting community, but this guy is a must-have. If you're not familiar with the Bucky O'Hare line from Boss Fight, you owe it to yourself to check it out. Number 4 is a figure that I never really asked for. Being a longtime Masters of the Universe fan, I never really said I needed this guy in figure form, but then we got him from Super 7, and I knew right then and there that I had been missing out for a very long time. Number 4 is the Masters of the Universe Classics Dylamug figure. This thing is, I mean, it's just perfect as far as I'm concerned. I love every aspect of this figure, from the fact that he doesn't reuse any parts. They nailed his filmation style, despite the fact that he's a Classics figure. That doesn't bother me. I think he belongs in the Classics line because we've never gotten him before. They absolutely nailed the face-changing action feature. You can put him into so many weird different expressions which change up the figure 100%. This is definitely one of the must-have She-Ra-based figures, Evil Horde-based figures. For me, he is a no-brainer. He had to appear on the list. I am so glad that Super 7 was able to put this figure out. Number 3 takes us back to another line we've already talked about in this list, and that would, of course, be Mythic Legions from the Four Horsemen, but we're going to Advent of Decay today. And number 3 is the Advent of Decay Brother Mandibulus figure. This is, as you might have seen from my top 10 Mythic Legions list, this guy is my favorite Mythic Legions of the year. So since Rhaegar was on the list, he couldn't also not be on the list. This figure is, as far as I'm concerned, a great example of what Mythic Legions is. Sculpt, paint, accessories, everything is just on point with this figure. He is gruesome and brutal looking, and he just has all of that cool factor that I think every Mythic Legions has, but his is just ratcheted up a bit. Everything about this guy is just fantastic. From the minute I got him out of the package, I knew that I was looking at a fantastic figure, and at the end of the day, there was no way this guy was not going to be on this list. Number 2 is a figure that for a while was going to be number 1 until he definitely got edged out just a little bit. But number 2 is a figure that I've already talked about on another list, the Masters of the Universe list, and this is easily my favorite Motu figure of the year. There's just no doubt about it for me. Dylamug is an amazing figure, but in terms of what this character is, this figure absolutely does it for me. My number 2 pick for the year is the Masters of the Universe Club Grayskull Filmation Hordak figure from Super 7. This guy is exactly what I've wanted in a Hordak figure for years and years. We've had many classic versions of Hordak, we've had the vintage figures, but this is exactly what I needed in terms of an action figure to represent the Hordak that I know, that I think of when I think of the character Hordak. I always think of the cartoon, and I think that Super 7 absolutely killed it with this figure. I wouldn't have wanted him any other way. This was a shoo-in for being on the list in general, and he was going to be number 1, but he just got edged out by, well, not 1 figure, but 4. Really quickly, before we get to number 1, I do want to give maybe a few honorable mentions to just maybe some companies in general, to some things that I think are just exceptional this year. One thing that I've already talked about kind of in depth in this list, and then in general, but just some things that don't necessarily belong on the list in terms of taking a spot. So We've got like Super 7, I think, are doing an amazing job with Masters of the Universe in terms of classics, in terms of filmation. They still aren't perfect, but I'm really, really happy with them. But beyond that, I think they are killing it with things that maybe a lot of folks that focus solely on Motu just don't see. Things like the reaction line. And not just the Motu reaction line. I think they are killing it across the board when it comes to all the other properties that they do, from things like Robotech, to Misfits, to the Universal Monsters. The Great Garloo got a figure. Phantom Starkiller is a full production figure, which I think is the craziest thing in the world, but they are killing it with that particular line. So I think it definitely deserves attention if you are a big 3 3/4 inch fan. We get things like the Mattel's Jurassic World line, which, you know, I really got into those for a short while before they kind of got crazy and I couldn't keep up with them anymore. And I'm not a huge dinosaur collector currently, but it was hard to not want to get into that line. I think everybody kind of agrees that they have absolutely nailed the dinosaurs that they've put out this year. I think they've done a fantastic job. Normally, I don't say that about Mattel because in general, they don't put out anything that I care about these days, but I think they absolutely killed it with that particular line. And then lastly, I know I've talked about them way too much at this point. I've already talked about them in this list twice, but the Four Horsemen really are killing it. If you have been in any way interested in Mythic Legions from my reviews or anybody else's reviews or just seeing them on Instagram or Facebook, you really owe it to yourself to get in on the ground floor. Don't wait on these figures. They just become so stupidly expensive. But the Horsemen are truly at the top of their game right now. Mythic Legions Advent of Decay is a wild success. There is no way to say it any other way. It's a perfect toy line for people who want kind of generic, but they're not generic, fantasy figures. It's a whole thing it's onto itself. It has no, you know, IP behind it. It's its own property, which is something you just do not see with toys really at all anymore outside of a few small companies doing their own thing. So Four Horsemen are definitely kind of the company of the year for me, if I guess I'm going to give them one. They absolutely blew me away with every figure that I got a hold of. You know, getting 40 figures on the same day really is going to do that to a person, but it's something that I think they've done a fantastic job and they continue to just kind of blow it out of the water. So I'm sure you've already figured out, or at least had a guess, in terms of what my number one was going to be at this point, because I haven't named them by now. I've ranted and raved about them in their review and on all of social media when they came out. This is a set of figures that I know I'm not alone in wanting for a very, very long time. I know I'm not alone in these being my top pick. They were my top pick for 2017, just in a much larger scale. So my number one pick for all of 2018 is the NECA Toys 1/12 scale, the 7-inch versions of the 1990 movie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figures. Those guys right there. They are easily, without a doubt, the best figures to have come out this year. I really won't even argue the point. There is no figure at this scale that I have seen that can even rival these toys. I think NECA went all out on these in every capacity, from the packaging to the accessories, not to mention the figures themselves, because they are easily some of the best toys that I have ever owned. They are everything that anyone has ever wanted in this scale for the 1990 movie. And, you know, let's be honest, they are figures that tons of people went crazy for during San Diego Comic-Con. Tons of people spent way too much money on the aftermarket, and people are going to get the chance to buy them in 2019 from GameStop as well. So NECA is doing everything they can to get what I think are their best figures ever out to as many people as possible, and they are easily one of the centerpieces of my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle collection. I don't think any TMNT collector can be complete without these guys. So that is my top 10 list for the year. I guess maybe my top 13, because there are 13 different figures here, but top 10 entries. So we've got a number of different lines here, a number of different companies involved. I would love to know what your guys' top 10s are, what your top 5s are, whatever your favorite figure was. I would also like to know who agrees with me on this particular number one, because I really don't think there's very much competition outside of this scale. Maybe if we're talking Hot Toys or something like that, but as you know, I don't get into that realm of things. So I am really interested to see what you guys have picked for your lists, and I cannot wait to see what we have got coming in 2019. I'm sure it's going to be just as crazy, if not crazier, than this year. So that's it for 2018, guys, and I will catch you next year.